Hey friend, I'm Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're listening to the Created Worthy podcast. This show is all about honoring the life stories of women from different ages, beliefs, backgrounds, and experiences. Everyone's got a story, and instead of getting stuck in the trap of unworthiness, this is a safe place for stories to be shared. On this show, we chat about the transformative power of creative processing too, and how we can utilize our God-given creativity with intention to heal, grow, find joy, create simplicity in the midst of our chaotic lives. So pull up a seat at our table because we are all created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Judy Tierney. Judy is an Austin-based real estate investor, agent, and coach, driven by a deep passion for helping her clients generate wealth and transform their wildest dreams into reality. Judy's career and life journey reflects her multi-passionate spirit. From early roles in advertising and sports and entertainment marketing, she eventually ventured into entrepreneurship, establishing her own communications consulting business and obtaining her real estate license. Ultimately, she realized that real estate was her true calling and has gone on to be a successful realtor and investor for over 8 years. Today, Judy is on a mission to empower others to achieve real success. As a trusted coach, she shares her expertise and insights, guiding aspiring women investors to navigate the real estate landscape with confidence. In her free time, Judy is a true adventurer at heart. She has explored all 7 continents and is always seeking out exciting new travel destinations, which we are definitely going to talk about today. I have had the absolute honor and privilege of walking alongside Judy this whole year as a coach and friend as she went through the process of writing her chapter in the Amazon best-selling book, Living All Out. Judy is one of the kindest and most humble people on the planet. She exudes joy, and most recently, I've come to find out that she and I share a passion for silly, dumb humor, which, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get to experience firsthand. Judy, thank you so much for joining us today on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait to hear even more about your real life story.
Oh my gosh, Danielle, I am so excited to be here. It is such an honor. I've listened to so many episodes of your podcast, and I love all of the inspirational stories that you have of the women and folks who come on to talk to you. And it is just such my honor to be here today. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. I can't wait for the world to hear more about who you are. You remind me a lot of my husband, where you kind of like don't brag about yourself. Like, you're very humble, but you've lived like a really incredible life. But I think you're also one of those people that, like, until you ask questions, you don't know that about you. So thank you for being courageous and coming here to my podcast, where I ask a lot of questions.
I do.
So just to start, I would love for you to take us back to where you started up. Like, where are you from? Can you paint a little picture of what life was like growing up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Texan. I'm a native Texan and a Texan through and through. I was born in San Antonio. My family moved around just a tiny bit when I was young. But by the time I was in 5th grade, we settled in Fort Worth, Texas. I was raised by a physician and a 1st grade school teacher. I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
What?
Youngest of 6. And just kind of the typical middle class family. Just a great upbringing. I feel really fortunate to have had a wonderful family. I went on to, I stayed in Texas for college and for business school. And then it was after business school, when I was 23 years old, that I ventured off to the big city. I moved to New Jersey and ultimately into New York City, and started my career in marketing and advertising, and have
that's where you actually talked, I think, a little bit more in detail about in the book chapter. But you did some pretty big things in the corporate world starting in New York City, right?
Yeah, I started my career at AT&T. Little gal who never been out of Texas before, as an adult, and went up with, um, just with my Southern accent, which I've lost since a little bit since I moved away back when I was
Yeah.
23.
I've
But
never
yeah,
heard a Southern accent in your voice.
but yeah, started out my career in marketing and advertising there. That was around the time that companies were starting to sponsor, sports leagues and concerts and entertainment properties and so forth. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. So that's what I wanted to do. And AT&T is a big, Fortune 500 company, was certainly getting into those types of activities with sponsoring the NBA and, you know, concerts and all the things. So I maneuvered my way into becoming a sports and entertainment marketing account director at one of the advertising agencies that AT&T worked with. So that's kind of how I got into that career. And that's also what took me from New Jersey to New York City.
Okay.
Yeah, so moved to New York when I was, just a couple of years after that. My best friend, who was also working at AT&T, left AT&T and went to work for one of the ad agencies. So the two of us were just, living large in the
Yeah.
city and getting entertained and wined and dined and taken out and just living high on the hog.
So from the outside, it looked like you were living high on the hog. I've never heard that, so I'm definitely going to use that. Now that sounds Southern.
Yeah, that's Southern. Yep.
Um, but I know that there came a point in your life where, although you were getting to do all these amazing experiences, like you did things like you were able to go to the Olympics and the Kentucky Derby, right? And just in
Yeah.
so many different things. But
So yeah, so at this point now, I was working for an agency, and now AT&T was my client, and so AT&T and Lucent Technologies were sponsoring the Atlanta Olympics, and so I was able to go down and work on the Olympics. We provided all of the communications for the athletes and the Olympic Committee, all the folks that were working on the event. So I moved to Atlanta for 3 months and worked on the Olympics. And when I moved back to the city, I just thought I had reached the pinnacle of my career. I had worked on, kind of the biggest, what I thought at the time was the biggest event that I could possibly have the opportunity to be involved with. So it was at that point that I said, I'm at the peak of my career. I've got to do something else. And I had always loved traveling. My best friend, who I referenced earlier, was also a big traveler. We had been on a lot of vacations together. So I
so that
asked,
was the same friend that you moved to New York City with is the one that
yeah,
then
yeah,
became
we
your
both moved
traveling
to New
partner.
York at the same time. We lived
Oh,
7 blocks
wow.
from each other. Her name's Christine. And so I just said, hey, Christine, I'm going to quit my job and go travel the world for a year. And she was like, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. I want to do that too. So we both left our advertising agency jobs. And, 3 months later, we were on a plane to London, where we stayed in Europe for we went to London and Greece for a few weeks. And then we were off to Africa for 5 months. And the whole trip was 14 months around the world. We went to Africa, India, Nepal, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and the Cook Islands. So 14 months with a backpack, and it was quite a different experience than being in the corporate world, where we were, on a little bit of an expense account and going to the nicest restaurants and, hanging out in skyboxes at Madison Square Garden. We went from that to literally sleeping in, $5 hostels, eating at the roadside stall. Yeah, it was
Totally different when somebody else is paying for you.
That's right.
Versus
That's
when
right.
you are now carrying out your own dreams.
That's right.
So how many countries have you traveled to?
Gosh, I think at the last count, it was around 28. Yeah.
What? So what has been your favorite country thus far that you visited?
Wow. So on the year-long journey back in the day, my favorite, I think, was Uganda. That's where we were able to go out and trek the mountain gorillas. And so the mountain gorillas, I don't know if you know, but they're
No.
they're an endangered species, and they live on the border of Uganda, Rwanda, and Zaire. And so that's really the only place that people have an opportunity to see them.
Can you go out like in the wild and interact with them?
Yeah, I don't know how I mean, I don't know if this has changed because this was, back in the 1990s, but we at the time, way back in the 90s.
Way back in the 1990s.
That's so last century.
So last century.
Yeah, so we went out, and they will take 6 people a day. And so you have a guide, and the guide takes you to where they spotted the mountain gorillas the day before. So it's literally just, the 6 people plus the guide who has a machete, and, you're trekking through the bamboo and
And they
whatnot.
know how to use those machetes. I've
They
seen
do.
Netflix documentaries before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, and you're not even guaranteed to see them, but they find where they were located the day before, and that's the spot where you start, and then off you go through the jungle, and until you find them. And then once you're there, you're allowed to just sit back and observe them for an hour.
Do they interact with humans?
Yes, like when we were there was a guy in our group who had on a pair of sunglasses, and the big silverback gorilla came over and took the sunglasses off the guy, and just was kind of playing with him a little bit, gave him back. But you're not allowed to approach them or touch them. But if they come over to you, you just are, you learn to just kind of sit there and enjoy the experience.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love gorillas.
Yeah. So I think that was my favorite. And then another favorite was many, many years. I mean, this is actually 2017. My friend Christine, who still lives in New Jersey with her husband and 2 daughters, approached me and said for her 50th birthday, she wanted to go to Antarctica. That was always on her bucket list. And so
That's
she
amazing.
said, I told John that, I wanted to do the last 2 continents with you. So, so the 2 of us over Christmas and New Year's in 2017 went to Antarctica. And we went to South America first, to Buenos Aires, and Antarctica was just an experience like no other.
Yeah.
It wasn't on my bucket list necessarily, but just going down there in an area that's so untouched, and you're literally 6 feet away from whales jumping around in the water and penguins running around, and it was just amazing.
Is there like resorts in Antarctica, or like when you go to book a trip to Antarctica, how do you even go about doing that? Like,
Yeah,
I don't feel like I've ever.
Yeah, no, you can't stay on the continent of Antarctica. So you actually have to take a boat.
Okay.
There are big cruise ships that go down to that area. But the best way, I think, to see it is to go on a smaller ship. The ship that we were on was 200 people total. That was passengers plus crew. So you're literally on a ship, and then each day you can go out onto the continent for a certain amount of time. So it's like 2 hours. So they're allowed to,
So it's basically a cruise.
It's a cruise, but it's not like your normal cruise where you're learning how to fold towels into animals. And
I can tell you've been on some cruises.
Yeah, I have been. Yeah. But it is a ship. It's much more educational. So like every night we would have, on the ship, we had an ornithologist, and we had a whale expert. We had a historian for Antarctica. So we had all of these different experts on, the different wildlife, and they would give lectures every night so that you could learn about what you were seeing. on the continent. And so that we did actually on that cruise, on that trip, we were able to go and spend the night on Antarctica. So literally we went out at 10 o'clock and it's, it was in December. So it's daylight pretty much all, 24-hour daylight. So we went out and you have these sleeping sacks that you dig a hole in the snow and then you lay out your sleeping
that's like
sack
the
with your
real Antarctica
sleeping bag
experience.
in it. Yep. And then you pull it up over your head. And so you're literally camping on the ice. And yeah, so, and before, when you get over there, you have an opportunity to walk around and visit with the penguins and kind of hang out
Oh,
with the wildlife.
I love that you've had all of these incredible experiences. And even just to say that you've been to all 7 continents is like just something that I don't meet a lot of people who have created those experiences for themselves. And
Yeah.
so, I
It's,
would love to know what one piece of advice is that you would have for someone who has a desire to travel, but just like doesn't know how to make it happen.
yeah, I think so for me, when we started on our round the world trip back, in the 90s, um,
Back in the 1990s
everyone
again.
said, how are you going to get along? What are you going to do? I think traveling is such an experience where people who travel quite a lot are so interested in people. They're so welcoming. So I've found that just throughout all of my travels, and I've been, traveling since I was in my teens, people are so open and receptive and helpful. So it can be daunting and intimidating to go to especially another country that's so different than the US or where you're coming from. If there's
Right.
a different language or even like a different alphabet where you can't even make sense out of the signs.
Right.
But there's always someone there to help you. And if you just, it's like facing your fears. If
Yeah.
just dive in, there will be someone there to catch you.
I love that. So essentially, just do it. Like,
Yeah,
if
just
you
do it.
have a desire to travel, don't just sit on it. Like, figure out your finances, do the thing you need to do to make that trip that you've been dreaming of happen.
Yeah, and I think too, there's trips for every budget, and you don't have to always go and stay at the nicest resorts. And in fact, that I've never been one to, go and do luxury travel. I mean, don't get me wrong, certainly wouldn't mind a
Yeah.
week or two in
Yeah.
in a nice resort. But I think you get so much more out of it if you stay kind of in the local hotel or get an Airbnb or and go to the restaurants, not where all of the Americans go to, but places where you can really meet the people. I mean,
Mm,
that to me is the most
yeah.
rewarding part of traveling is
Immerse
really
yourself in that
immersing
culture.
yourself in the culture, getting to know the people, getting to know the places. And of course, you want to go and see the big sites,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's just, going to that little tea shop that is totally off the beaten path or, just
Yeah.
immersing yourself, like you said, into the culture, I think is just, to me, that makes all the difference.
I love that. So, let's go back to your career just for a moment. I know that you talked about how you were in the corporate world.
Hmm.
After some time, you were like, I'm going to go travel for what was it, 15 months, 14
Yeah,
months,
14 months.
14 months. But then you had to come back to
Yeah.
reality and like make an income, I assume. Like,
Yeah.
because like you said, at this point, your traveling was coming out of your own pocket.
Yeah.
Your travel expenses were coming out of your own pocket. So you go back to work, or you come back to the US. What did you do? Like, how did you end up in real estate?
Well, I came back. It took me a little while to get to real estate, but I came back and I came back to Texas, or, I was in New York, came home back to Texas when I was done traveling and, you know, eased into US life for a month or two and then started looking for a job. And I ended up in the same industry, doing the same thing, but this time in San Francisco. So I moved out to the Bay Area, took a job with another agency that was working on entertainment and sports sponsorships for some pretty high profile clients. And, I think as you referenced earlier, kind of got back into that, going to the Triple Crown horse racing events, the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont Stakes, Daytona 500. So I was really kind of back into the scene. But I realized very early on that the company that I was working for, was not aligned with my values. And even though I learned that, I stuck with it. If you read my chapter in the Living All Out book, I talk about this a little bit, but, for the first time, I really think in my life, I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what to do. I was in a new place. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was in this job that I was absolutely miserable. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have been in that situation before. And, I just stuck with it until the economy took a turn and the company was doing layoffs. And so I lost my job. So it was kind of the first time in my life that someone else made the decision for me. So that was, that was definitely a lesson. And I vowed that I would never do that again. Luckily I had a great friend who kind of picked me up and said, oh, well, while you're figuring out what you're doing next, I'm working for a client who is in need of a lot of project work. And why don't you just do a project and on a consulting basis and then, you can, while you're looking for a job. So I said, great. And I started that. And that was in 2003, started a consulting project and never went back to a full-time corporate job. But I did, start my own consulting business at that point, and
so
did
that's
that
really where you pivoted into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's where I started pivoting into entrepreneurship. That's really where I started kind of the bulk of my investing, activities. So I was living in San Francisco. I had a condo there, and I purchased. My parents were moving out of their West Texas home, so I purchased their house down in Odessa, Texas. That was my kind of first real investment property. And then as I was working in corporate, I was, doing a little investing. I moved. It turned out all of my clients were outside of San Francisco. So I was traveling every week to see different clients. And I thought, gosh, I can do this from anywhere. So I decided to move back to Austin, which is, the last place that I had lived in Texas. And my best friend from business school had, kind of gone through the corporate world, left the corporate world and started his own real estate firm. And so he helped me find my condo in Austin. And we had just such a wonderful time looking at places. Every time I came into town, we had so much fun. And that's really when it hit me, this is what I need to be doing. So I moved, I bought my condo in Austin in 2011, but I was still doing a lot of work in California. So it was back and forth. And it wasn't until like 2015 that I finally said, I've got to get my license. So in between projects, I studied and got my real estate license and just went on from there. And, it was a slow process. I was kind of on the fence, doing some corporate stuff, doing some real estate stuff, mostly corporate, just because that's where my client base was.
Yeah.
But it over the years, it kind of shifted a little bit, 90-10, 70-30. And then when COVID hit in 2019, things really dried up in the consulting world. And for a little while in the real estate world too, but soon after, things took off. As people decided, we've got to find a bigger place. We've got to get a house with an office. We have to have
Yeah.
place to go outside and all of the stuff. So that was really what, kind of tipped the scale. And
Yeah.
that's where I really moved into real estate.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your pivot most recently to becoming a real estate coach, right? Like just in the last
Yeah.
year, has it been
It's really been in the last year. I've decided I've been investing for 20 years in real estate in my own properties. And that's really kind of what lit me up about real estate. And it's also been something that's enabled me to have some income, some residual income on the side. And it's allowed me to do a lot of the traveling that I've done over the past 20 years.
Mhm.
So it's been something that, I attribute to kind of my freedom of going off, to wherever I want to go in the world.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's given me that opportunity, and I love the idea of helping other people do that as well. So I'm super passionate about helping investors in
Okay. So
particular.
your coaching is more for investments.
My coaching is yes. So
Okay.
I'm still doing helping to Austin and Texas based buyers and sellers with the traditional real estate transactions. But the pivot has been that I realized I really want to help people, aspiring investors, kind of figure out how to get started.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of people, especially we as women entrepreneurs, we're so busy, we're so overwhelmed. There's so much on our plate that we often, have an interest in doing this. Oh yeah, I'll get to that next year when I can kind of figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Or,
And then 10
you
years
just,
later.
yeah, you don't have time, or you don't think you have the resources and knowledge. So what I really am passionate about doing is helping people get over that intimidation factor and really helping them learn everything they need to know in one place so that they can begin their investing careers.
Hmm, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that too. So much
Yeah.
goodness just to learn from your
Thank you.
courage to just take the next step to pursue the thing that you feel most called and aligned to.
Yeah. It's
With
not always easy, and I haven't always done
no,
it, but I've got to tell you, ultimately I get there and it feels so good getting to that other
yes,
side.
yes, there's freedom there, right? Like that cliche phrase of like freedom is found on the other side of what makes you uncomfortable. Like
Right.
it's cliche, but
Right.
it's true. It's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
especially when what's making you uncomfortable is actually like the thing that is between you and what you desire, right?
Yeah.
And like being able to just like kick down that roadblock and be like, nope, I'm going to figure this out. And now you're helping other people to figure that out.
Yeah.
I know investing is something that I'm very interested in, specifically real estate
Hmm.
investing, but also a lot of people in my community and in my circles are like, I would love to do that, but it's still hard to pay my current mortgage, or I'm
Yeah.
struggling to find my first house. So to somebody maybe in shoes similar to mine, what
Yeah.
would you say the first step is if investing or owning investment properties is a desire? Like,
Yeah.
is it a mindset thing? Is it a savings thing? What can we do to just move the needle forward
Yeah.
towards that?
Well, I actually have on my website, I actually have a free guide, which I call 6 key steps to jumpstarting your real estate investment journey. And I would love, for anyone in your shoes or who's
Yeah.
thinking about it, please jump on the website, judytierney.com, and download a free copy of it. But to answer your question, I think it is, it's a combination of those things. I think it is a mindset thing. One of the first steps that I recommend, you talked about finances, is really just kind of understanding what your finances are and understanding like how much you could afford to put down if you are buying a property. So I recommend that everyone talk to a lender or a mortgage broker. And it's a 15-minute conversation. Just jump on the phone, They'll ask you some questions about your financial situation, your assets, your liabilities, et cetera. And that can really be a guide to, helping you understand, what kind of loan you would qualify for. But even if you don't qualify for, the loan that you want, there's other ways to do it. My very first investment was back when I moved to New Jersey. I didn't even realize it at the time, but my family upbringing was all about go to school, get a great education, buy a house, save money. And when I got to New Jersey, I really wanted to buy a house, and it was so much more expensive than Texas. I was like, I'll never be able to buy a house here. But I had a friend, a coworker, and the two of us said we both want to buy a house. Neither of us can afford one, so let's join forces and do it together.
Yeah.
We bought a great house, and we rented rooms to three of our friends, and it paid the mortgage. So there are definitely creative ways to do things in the investing world. So I think, don't get discouraged. It is about mindset.
Yeah.
But
like
where
there's
a
always
will,
a solution.
yeah,
Yes.
where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes. That is brilliant. Brilliant advice. Because I think when I think about investing, and I'm sure that other people probably relate on this front, but it's like, oh my gosh, well, I have credit card debt. So until I don't have credit card debt, there's no way I could invest. But just thinking of those like outside of the box ways of like, even learning about investment or downloading your guide, like that's moving the needle forward in one way or another. And eventually those things equal a big step, right?
Yes,
in
absolutely.
which we can actually go in on. I love that idea of going in on a property with like a trusted friend and then renting out rooms, paying for your mortgage, and then keeping that property as your first investment property.
Yeah. And it was funny because that was when I was, I don't know, 24, 25 years old. I didn't even when I didn't even realize that it was an investment property. I wasn't even in that mindset. I was just thinking, buy a house, buy a house, buy a house.
Right.
So there are definitely creative ways. And even just like getting your house in order and understanding where you are today, even if you're not ready to make the investment today, you can kind of get into that mode where you know what you need to do to
start making a
be
plan
there in 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah. I love that. So we're going to pivot real quick into creative processing, because on this show, I always talk about creative processing. And if this is your first time listening, creative processing is a tool that we can all use to activate our creative minds to process through a certain intention. It's an innate gift. It's using our innate creativity to process our lives and to heal and to find joy and to find peace and all of those good things. So when you're practicing creative processing, I encourage using a prompt like the purpose of enter your creative outlet is to process, enter your certain intention. Judy, you told me that your creative processing method, which is currently not being practiced as creative processing, but it still is exercise, walking dogs. Do you have dogs?
My best friend has a dog, and we go out and do a morning walk. Like my friend and the dog and I go out and do a morning walk. So I see this dog every day. I manage his Instagram account.
Oh,
and
that marketing thread is still in you.
Yeah.
And then also doing breath work and journaling. And so I know that you never have framed these things as creative processing before. But now that you know that creative processing is simply the act of pairing whatever sparks your creative mind. So I love when people bring up walking, because I think that's an uncommon way of thinking about creativity. Deirdre Palm Adams, which is in the mastermind and in the book, she talked about how walks on the beach is her primary creative processing method. The act of moving your body, for a lot of us, sparks our creativity. Same thing with like if you're in the shower, right? Like you have all of these creative thoughts, but you wouldn't typically think of like showering as a creative process or a creative method.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually is. Anything that engages your creative mind is creative processing, or has the potential to be creative processing. So whatever sparks your creative mind, and then pairing that with intention is how you practice it. So thinking about walking, breath work, and journaling,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that if you paired any of those things with a certain intention, so for instance, like the purpose of journaling is to process my next investment opportunity.
Yes.
Do you think that that would be helpful?
I do. And you know what? I've got to tell you, Danielle, you over the past year or year and a half, however long it's been since we met, have helped me in this area tremendously. I mean, yes, because I never really thought of it that way, right? But for me, kind of getting out of, the chaos of, oh, I've got to do this, I got to do that, I've got a meeting, got an appointment. But like during the day, we're all so busy and there's so much going through our mind that anything for me that I can do to kind of just take a step back and just get clear, whether it's going outside, getting fresh air, just taking myself away from the computer and all of the other chaotic things that are going on in my world is so helpful to me. And with journaling, I used to do journaling a long time ago. I never thought about it as creative processing, but as we were writing our stories for Living All Out, and you were the mastermind behind helping everyone in that book.
Such an honor.
So and even talking to you when we had our one-on-one meetings, just like having you kind of give me prompts and drawing that kind of stuff out of me, and then me taking those prompts and so forth and going back and journaling on my own was just so helpful. So I think to me, and then breath work we mentioned was another thing that I just started doing this year, over the past 12 months.
Right.
So, and that's really one where the goal of breath work is just to like kind of be and let the thoughts come to you and so forth. So so you've been such a wonder and help in that
I am
process.
so grateful to hear this. I love that you brought up how it like can be something that creates simplicity in our lives. Like just carving out that moment to maybe journal the creative processing prompt. Like the purpose of whatever you're doing is to process whatever you need to process, whatever is overwhelming you, whatever your source of chaos is in that moment. At first, I encourage people to like physically write it down just so you can kind of train your brain and build that neural pathway. But eventually, it sounds like it has subconsciously worked for you already. But when you're aware that you actually do have the control to slow things down. Our world, our human beings function in overstimulated and understimulated nervous systems all the time. So finding that like balance, it can feel impossible. But the truth is it's because we let our minds run us instead of running our minds. And so when we can just slow it down and we can really just say, okay, right now in this moment, I can acknowledge that I'm feeling overwhelmed. But the purpose of slowing down and taking 10 deep breaths is to process peace. Like as simple as that, just making it so simple so that your body will physically react to what you say and tell your mind to do. And creativity is just an innate gift within us. So being able to just pair those things together is like, I can't take credit for that. I'll always be like, God revealed this to me. And I think everyone needs to know about it. And I'm still learning every day about like the power
it's a practice, right?
Exactly. It's similar to breath work or meditation and praying. It's you just practice it so that then it becomes something you just naturally do. And then you enjoy your life more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's so important, especially right now with so much chaos in the world. And our businesses and
Yeah.
like trying to
And so
do.
many new ideas, like for
Yes.
entrepreneurs specifically, but then also like we can't not acknowledge the fact that we live in a broken world and
Mm-hmm.
there is pain and there
Mm-hmm.
are trauma all around us, all over the place. Everywhere you look, somebody is hurting or somebody you know is going through something really hard.
Right.
And to carry all of that and not know what to do with it can destroy our lives and our health.
Right.
We got to
Absolutely.
do something with it. We can't just
Absolutely.
let it be this pent up energy within us that just like causes us to one day implode or explode. And we're just constantly finding ourselves face down on the ground, not knowing what to do or feeling stuck.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be like that.
No.
We don't want to be like that. We're lesson learners around here, not lesson repeaters. If you need to
Yes.
repeat it a few times, go ahead. Repeat the lesson. We all have been there, done that. But at some point, we got to learn it.
That's
And
right.
that's why neuro plasticity is so cool, being able to rebuild neural pathways or build neural pathways by practicing things to enjoy our lives. So,
Absolutely.
just in closing, I would love for you to tell us just a little bit more about what you're doing right now, where
Okay.
people can find you, and what you could help them with.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm doing right now on in 2 days from now, I'm going to be getting on a flight to Portugal and I'll be in Europe for 5 weeks. Yes. So I'm going
What?
to visit my niece who has moved over to Portugal for a year. And we are going to, I'm going to spend time with her family, her two kids, 8 and 10, and my niece and her husband. And then we'll be going to Sweden and Copenhagen. And then I'll be going on to London with my sister.
Have you been
And
to Portugal before, though?
no, no.
Okay,
And
so another new country.
yes. And I haven't been to Sweden either.
Oh my
So
gosh, I'm so
yeah.
excited for you.
So we'll, yes, then London, and then I'll be on a transatlantic cruise back to the States. So I've
That's the
got,
way to do it.
yes. So this, yes, exactly. So yeah, this will be more of this won't be the Antarctica cruise.
Yeah, a little bit different this time.
Yeah, so I'm taking a little bit of time off, but while I'm going to be away, I'm going to be doing some creative processing, and I'm going to be working on a couple of exciting things I have coming up next year. I'm going to be starting one-on-one coaching sessions with people from around the country who are interested in um, finding out about real estate investing.
Yeah.
And then I'll also be doing a VIP day for this, which will be a small group sessions.
Wow.
And that will happen over like a 5 to 6 hour period where we'll all just get on a Zoom call and talk about and answer questions from everyone about, how they can kind of get over their fear, what they need to know. A lot of the stuff that is in my guide will go to in way more depth.
Yeah. It sounds like
And
this will
so
be
forth.
like a gentle, but probably not so gentle push into like, hey,
Yes.
you say you want to do this, but
Yes.
this is how you do it. So let's do it. I
That's
love that
right.
you're doing VIP days for that.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So that's all coming up when we start 2024. So yeah, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to be focusing most of, I do have some client work here in Austin that folks that I'm working with, but I'm really going to be focusing on kind of what I can do to help investors move their journey forward.
I love that, Judy. Can you
Yeah,
tell us
thank you.
where the best place is to connect with you?
Yeah, the best place is on my website, and that's judytierney.com. And that's JUDY, T as in Tom, IERNEY. And that's where you can download the free guide. And it's also where you can get on the waiting list for the coaching or the VIP day. And then, you can read more about my story and just kind of check out some other things I'm doing.
Yes, definitely go to her website. All of her information will be in the show notes. Judy, it has been such an honor to have you here. I am so grateful to have spent some time with you here today and for your courage and vulnerability to share your story. Your spirit of adventure and determination to help others experience freedom in all facets of their life is a gift to all who have the privilege of knowing you.
Aww.
Keep shining your light hysterically laughing, especially with me, and walking confidently down the path you've been called and equipped to journey down. You, my friend, are created worthy. Thanks for listening and tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that today's show resonated with you, and if it did, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show, and it expands the reach of the stories and concepts that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. And if you're on social media, come hang out with me. You can find the Created Worthy podcast on both Instagram and Facebook. Or come follow along with my personal IG page, where I just share more about the real, sometimes messy life of your fellow worthy warrior. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, we are all created worthy.